One more question was another thing people is really popular is compost tea.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. That was one of my uh uh actually one was compost tea, garden elixir or snake oil.
Garden, okay, yeah, because that's one of those things where okay, so I've got a composter and I'm making compost. I mean, why? I mean, all compost tea is various different ways of putting water through compost, making brown water and pouring the brown water, and there's compost stuff in the water. There's nutrients in the water, right? So why would one want to do this?
Well, I think as a food, if you need a liquid feed, you surely do get nutrients by using a compost tea. But the emphasis on compost tea for the last, I don't know, 20 years or whatever, has been on first of all, a special kind of compost tea where it's aerated, and often they add different things to
Oh,
the
molasses and all this other crap.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
then you spray it on the leaves, and supposedly you get
Oh,
the
fuller. Yeah,
no, it's not even a foliar spray, which would work
right.
as a nutrient, but supposedly the microorganisms in the compost are going to colonize the leaves and protect it from disease. Or in the soil, they could protect, it's another way instead of hauling compost, and to the soil, just add compost tea and you're seeding it with microbes which are beneficial. So that's totally false because for two reasons. First of all, when you spray it on the leaves, you're taking microorganisms that thrive in a dark, humid, nutrient-rich environment. You put them on leaves which are nutrient poor, sunny, and dry. So
Right.
basically, you die.
Right. They're
And then
being bombarded with UV all day long.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then as far as I was going to say, the uh I thought there was one other thing I was going to say. I can't remember it about oh yeah, seeding it in the soil. This is years ago. I haven't seen this for many years, but they used to talk about you could people used to sell worms for your soil because good garden soil has a lot of worms in it. So
Yes.
basically, if you add worms, you'll have good garden soil. But that's not true. It's because they'll just die. Because if you have good garden soil that's rich in nutrients and organic matter, worms will. There's enough worm eggs or whatever, or they'll travel there and be there. Same thing with the beneficial microorganisms. If the food is there, they'll multiply and thrive. If you just throw the microorganisms on the soil without food, and the food is really bulky organic materials. So if you just throw the microorganisms in the soil without that bulky organic material that you're trying to
Ah,
avoid having to haul, pitchfork into the ground, they're just going to die off. So there's been a lot of experiments. I before I gave this talk, I was reviewing all sorts of literature on experiments that were done for various types of compost teas. And there's so many plants, there's so many potential effects. Uh, and so many ways of making compost tea. Basically, the summary is that oftentimes you do that and nothing happens. Sometimes you do it and you have a bad effect, and
right.
sometimes you do it and you have a good effect. So
Right.
and I contend you could put anything on the soil, like just put some ginger ale in the soil, and if you set up enough of a replicate, enough so you can detect just very small differences in growth, and you have like a whole bunch of plants, with a well-designed experiment with ginger ale, not ginger ale, you probably see some effect.
Right.
So,
But
but
yeah.
that doesn't mean it's worth it or that it's a biologically significant effect. It means you can see an effect.
Well, yeah. I mean, my take on the compost tea is like if you have a plant and you pour that in the ground, you basically water the plant with compost tea. It's getting some water and some nitrogen, and so
Well, it gets a lot of nutrients potentially. I mean,
yeah,
compost has a lot of nutrients in it.
yeah. So I mean, you're that's the only benefit of it, but it's unsustainable because I mean, like as you said, you're better off building the soil health because then all those things will just be in the soil. And every time it rains, everything that's in the soil will be, there's a soil solution will be set up and it's available to the plant.
Well, I'll tell you an anecdote is that I have a good friend who writes about gardening, and he's a big fan of compost tea, and he's going on and this and that. So I told him, I said, okay, like, I'm going to do this, but I want to make sure that you don't say, well, I didn't do this right, I didn't do that right. You send me a compost tea maker,
the Holy Grail,
and the compost to make it, so I don't, nothing, and I'll use it in my garden, and we'll see, see if there's some effect. I'll do it in the garden, I'll do it on the lawn, a strip. You know what he said? He said, your garden's too organic. So then I did take his thing, and I have a friend that had a farm in not very rich soils, like a sandy soil, and I asked him, I said, "Could I just do like part of your, like just the row of beans? I'll do some with the compost tea." So I did it. I found the instructions. I did it, and no effect.
Wow.
So I'm not saying you would never get any effect from any type of compost tea on any plant, but you can get effect on anything from anything. So
yeah. Well,
it's not worth it. It's not worth the time.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the thing when you consider what you have to do. A lot of people talk about weed tea, where you take, you do some weeding in one of your garden beds, you throw all the weeds in a bucket, you fill it up with water, you leave it there till it stinks to high heaven, and you pour that juice back in the garden.
Yeah,
it literally smells like someone took a dump in the bucket.
Right. People do that with comfrey. They make a comfrey.
Yeah, comfrey, that's a big popular
one. Or nettles. That's a big thing also.
Yes. But I wonder if you compared that to actually taking a dump in the bucket and mixing that up. which would be the richer.
You can be in that experiment.
Exactly. That might be YouTube gold. And just speak to your worm point there. I've often, because I tend to do, kind of like what you do with your trees, but in the whole garden. Like most of the beds are covered in some sort of some crap that's composting on the surface of the soil, on a no-till approach. So it's anyway, I've had people comment saying, you don't have red wigglers in your garden, so that's not going to break down the right way. Right. And it's just like, there's like 1,000 things in the soil that break that down. Even if there was no worms on Earth,
people, I once heard
it would break down anyway.
I once heard this lecture, and the guy said it more eloquently than me. He said that when you know some science, if you know some knowledge, you have some amount of knowledge, that should open up to you how much you don't know.
Yes.
Not like, well, if you don't have, I know about worms, and if you don't have these wigglers in your soil, they're not gonna do it right. I mean, you just add, something's happening, and we don't know every reason for it, but it's the right thing.
Yeah. So, and even if you don't have, I noticed over the years, like, because my garden was not a garden before, it was just a field. So when I first started there, I didn't have a lot of worms in the soil, and now I do.
Yeah.
It's almost anywhere. You just reach in and, there's worms in your hand, sort of thing, right? Because there's more worm food in the ground. Right. So the worms are prolific, and despite the fact that there's birds there all the time, killing every worm they can find, there's still an infinite amount of worms in the garden, because it's a great place to be if you're a worm. Hey, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here, go to Veseys.com to buy whatever you need for your garden this year. And use my coupon code GAVS23 to get free shipping, as long as there's a pack of seeds in the order and there's no oversized items in the order. Check out the description box of this video for details. You can buy everything you need from Veseys. They have seeds, fruit bushes and trees, soil amendments, pest solutions, tools, clothing, and lots of other stuff too. So yeah, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here and they sell something you need, buy it from them using my coupon code, and happy gardening.